I want to introduce the first speaker of the last panel. Peggy Chan is director of the ISS Family Institute in Hong Kong, where she develops and directs educational programs based in Bowen theory. She has been a long-time student of Bowen theory and travels from Hong Kong to Washington, D.C. to attend the postgraduate program for many years. She has begun to make herself available as a presenter and a writer as well. And we are grateful to have Ms. Chan talking to us in Houston about the position women hold in traditional Asian families and to bring her thinking here. Ms. Chan will host the second international conference on Bowen Family Systems Theory in Hong Kong in 2018, and I hope tonight later she'll talk about that meeting. Ms. Chan, look forward to your thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much to Louise and Victoria for giving me this opportunity to talk about this topic. Actually, this subject is a matter of it's close to heart. It's a subject close to my heart because I've seen family members, relatives, friends, and clients affected by it, and myself mildly affected by it, and it has been a big part of much of our interpersonal relationships in our families. So I hope today, by reviewing this topic, is actually a time for me to reflect how I can do better. Maybe I hold it this way. Hello? Much better. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So my topic today is second-class citizens, evolution and emotional processes. In this presentation, I would like to review this phenomenon in Chinese families. And my apology for limiting it to Chinese families because I'm born and raised in it and it's more familiar to me. But I think in many Asian families, we have this phenomenon also. So I would be interested to look at how this phenomenon evolves and how was it sustained, what functions did it serve, and how did it impact on people, and what are the emotional processes involved. I hope that by reviewing that, we can know how to move forward more effectively and adapt more efficiently to the forces around us. Dr. Corner talked about the ascent of women in the coming days, and I said that we have succeeded quite a bit in Hong Kong. On the society level, we have quite equal opportunities in education, in career, and I don't feel any kind of discrimination at work and in education. But I think when we come back to families, things are more subtle, and we still have traces of this kind of gender bias in some of our families. So by second-class citizens, I mean it's the phenomenon whereby males are given more preferential treatment and privileges, while females are relegated to a secondary importance in the family. What forms does it take? It may take less desirable treatment. So I heard of some families when children are young, the girls are not allowed to sit together with the family. They have to eat in another table by themselves, or they may be given worse food. Another form is they will be given less rights. So many times, in many families, girls are excluded from the estates or wills of the elders, so they will not be allowed to inherit the properties of the families. Or they will be given less educational opportunities. If the resources are tight, of course the boys will get the educational opportunities, but not the girls. And thirdly, they will be expected to sacrifice, like having to skip school or stop school prematurely and go to work to support the family, while the boys will have higher education. Fourthly, they will be maybe not allowed to participate in important decisions and tasks of the family. So like how to decide on some important matters may be out of their concern. On the other hand, they will be required to do mundane or undesirable tasks for the family. I want to do a review of how women's role evolved through our history in China, in our families. And at the very beginning, it's actually a woman-centered world. I think we share similar human history. In the very early days, actually, in China, it's a woman's world. Women are the leaders, were the leaders. It's hard to imagine. I read the history, and it said that actually in those days, children were named after women, and women's physique was strong, and properties were communal. It's matriarchal families. Up to this day, we have matriarchal families in China, in Taiwan. So in Yunnan, we have these tribes, the Moso tribe in Sichuan and Yunnan. They are still matriarchal families. And in Taiwan, the Army tribe, they're also matriarchal. However, things really changed quite a bit around 3,000 years ago. I think it coincided with the hunter-gathering period, the cessation, the ending of the hunter-gathering period. People settle on land, and the multiple marriages changed to pair bond. Public properties changed to private properties, and emphasis is put on the accumulation of produce and wealth, and productivity was emphasized. And men started to control productivity and become more important, replacing women in importance. And this, I think this time marks the decline of women's position in Chinese history. So women became lower and lower in status and became more seen as instrument for producing children. And at the core of this time starts the feudalism. So it's around 3,000 years ago, 2000 BC, that feudalism really become the rule of the day in China. And at the core of feudalism is Confucianism. Confucianism is a very important way of life that governs Chinese families for a long time. And I think women's position is very affected by Confucianism. And as part of the teaching, it laid down very strong gender view, saying that men are responsible for external affairs, women responsible for internal affairs. And what's important, it also stressed out very strongly that men is superior and women is inferior. And this is a very strong message for families all along these 2,000 or 3,000 years. And there's code of conduct for women, very rigid code of conduct. It involves 3 submissions: submission to father while the father is alive, submission to husband while you are married, and if your husband is dead, then you have to submit to your son. So submissions and obedience, compliance are very much emphasized to the male. For women, they also have to obey 4 virtues, meaning being chaste, being careful in speech, having simple, neat and tidy experience, and being hardworking. So these codes govern very tightly the behavior required of women in those days. So what was emphasized or taught to women very strongly is that you have to listen, mainly to listen, to comply, obey and follow. Submission to male is highly emphasized. They have no political right. Women could not rule, could not be a leader, could not join regular social activities. And you are not to argue and have your own opinion. So it stressed very much that woman is not a person of her own right. They're required to be an appendage of the male, to have no self. Their main function is to serve the male, to help the male achieve its goals. When I read the history and the teaching, it's quite hard, right? And is very hard to see how this kind of rules can be established and be carried on for so long as well. However, I think when I realized the historical background and some of the factors that Dr. Bowen mentioned, it really helped me to have a different idea, to have some more openness about this. To continue, in this feudalism, the woman's role is portrayed with men is that men are portrayed as strong, and women is preferred to be weak. Actually, the weakness of women is beautified in literature, in social behavior. To compound with that, religion also play a part in collaborating with this gender view. Of course, it's hard for women, but religion, the part that religion plays is that you have to accept your fate, be obedient, otherwise you'll be sent to hell. So in that way, religion also collaborated with this oppressive gender view. So as I review this teaching, I can see that Confucius really did a very tight job in working out a very comprehensive and systemic, tightly knit control on nearly all aspects of the woman's role. I think there's a very highly anxious attempt to preserve the male, which I think I've seen as very important for preserving the country, the family. And the patriarchal system is very firmly established. Men was dominant and as masters of women, and women are trained to practice altruism, to sacrifice, so that the whole group may prosper. And the woman's identity as a descendant of a family of origin will cease once she married out, and will be treated as an outsider by her natural parents. And she will be incorporated into her husband's family, responsible for carrying the family line of her husband. And her success in her future family is reflected in the success in reproducing a large number of descendants for her husband. And her identity would be with her children, with her husband. And she would die as a member of her husband's family. Her identity, through her family of origin, will cease upon her marriage. So I think these views really reflect a very strong force of togetherness. There's a very strong push for women to comply, to abide by these rules, being loyal to her to her husband. Like if she remained with her husband's family, even though her husband's dead and will not remarry, she'll be glorified by the court or by the government. And so loyalty is highly emphasized. And I think this strong force of togetherness really stems from a heightened anxiety. When I look back at the history at that time, it's like the era of the warlords. The people really fought all over the place to get land, to fight with each other. So I guess the heightened anxiety, the constant wars, the lack of resources, the fighting for resources, really make this kind of thinking, this strong push for togetherness, and this strong force towards making women be altruistic, be serving the men as a very important background. And so part of it also propelled women it was made to give up self, sacrifice for the male siblings. Good caring of the males is seen as a virtue. How to reinforce it is by the social approval, by giving a lot of approval for sacrificial acts, for acts that are seen to benefit the males. And males are frequently ascribed with more importance. So given this context, women learn to be compliant, learn to be sacrificial, learn to be obedient to male. And how did women cope all through these ages? So as I reviewed history, I found it very interesting that when we women are not that obedient all of the time. And so there are different kinds of women groups that try to cope in their own way to this kind of male favoritism. So the first group that I identify is what we call Shintak self-groomed women. So this kind of woman will perform ritual that they will comb their hair by themselves, signifying that they will not marry. Like in those days, when women marry, they will have their mother or the elder to comb their hair as a signature that they will go into marriage. But this group of women, they defy marriage because they've heard many horror stories about the ill treatment of women, so they will not enter marriage. And so they perform this ritual to signify that they will not marry. At that time, they were able to do that because at that time, the silk industry was prospering, and they were able to work to earn money. So they have this kind of financial independence to help them. And so they don't want to enter into horrible marriages, abused by husband, and having unneeded heavy responsibilities. And when they grow old, they usually have these long buns. So for this group of women, because of their financial independence, they're able to found their own life. They're able to lead a self-autonomous life, and sometimes they supported their family also. And for many, they feel that they get freedom. So one of these elderly women, when they were interviewed, said, "We are like a bird. We can fly to where you want." So we have this group of women who try to defy the rule of the time and try to find freedom by this way. And they build their own communities. And they have these houses of themselves because they were not allowed to go back into their family of origin, and they need to have a community with people that will take care of each other. And so their friends will take care of their body when they die, and also buy their own altar. So this is a community of unmarried women using their own way to defy the unjust situation at that time, and they protest against marriage. They became self-reliant, strong, independent. I think they're the early feminists. So they started near the latter part of Qing dynasty to the Republic of China, and then they gradually ended around the 1930s when the war started and the society became less oppressive. And then there's another group of women also cope with in another way. We call the Hakka women. This group of women are the migrants from the northern part of China. As you see, this group of women are very physically strong. They wear these black hats because they always have to go to the field to work as farmers. They are very strong, tough ladies. They are very good at adapting to the natural environment and the social environment. So because they are migrants, they have to face very adverse situations, and they were not able to get good lands. So they just ended on the hilly and the impoverished lands of the coastal part of China. And because their lands are poor, they could not sustain their livelihood. So frequently, the men have to go offshore to work while they were left by themselves, like a single mother, taking care of the whole family. So these women are like the CEO of the family, the single parent of family, and they did everything while the men are offshore. So they're responsible for household matters inside, outside, and they will not go along with the rule of that time, which is binding their feet or binding their chest. They're physically strong. They were also soldiers. They fought alongside with their men when they are war or to their homes. They're notable in their being hardworking, being very sacrificial, persevering, and resilient, and accepting of the hard situations facing them. Yet they are also very cheerful. They preserve, they're very persevering. They're smart and responsible for everything in family and for the livelihood of the family. However, why do I cite this example? It's because this group of women being so diligent, so dutiful, and yet so important to the family, and yet they still occupy an inferior position in the family. They are not highly looked upon. Why? Okay. So, relatively speaking, these Hakka women were very important in the family. They were in charge of the actual operation of the whole family. They were the economic pillar. They served the men detailedly, like superior guests. They have the actual importance, but not the ascribed importance in the family, in the clan and the family. They still operate under the male superior, woman inferior paradigm and the oppressive feudal system constraints. The progressive role that these women showed in family is not evident and not recognized in society. And actually, they face even greater discrimination than the other women. They have no freedom or autonomy in marriage. In many Hakka villages, there are still many child brides. 60 to 70% of women's marriages in the Fujian Hakka region have child bride marriages. The daughters were often traded as young brides who would then work hard and be a hard-working labor for the husband's family. And though they have much contribution, they are not allowed to join the family's ancestral worship, not allowed inheritance of properties. So how was it? Yeah. So I was asking myself, how does it come about that this group of very diligent women still do not have a good place in the society? So I think by duty following, by automatically undertaking tough tasks, by not thinking about these tasks, whether they are should be done totally by them or whether they can be delegated, by really automatically undertaking tasks, I think this may be part of the problem. So the Hakka women, by being so sacrificial, so altruistic in some way, but without thinking about their limits, without thinking about whether it's fair to them, may also be a part in reinforcing the unjust cycle. And also the anxiety of making ends meet and the tough economic conditions may also propel their perseverance, toughness, and overfunction and altruism. And the very automatic acceptance of the task may leave little room for reflection, little room to check out the reality of the situation, and may also make it tempting to you to sacrifice, and making it so the inadequate development of the sense of self may be a factor also, which does not allow people to make a good assessment of situation and to regulate one's response to the environment. Dr. Bowen said, when persons bringing their best to a relationship, having the courage to define self, who is as invested in the welfare of family as in self, who is neither angry nor dogmatic, whose energy goes to changing self rather than telling others what they should do. I think reflecting on the Hakka woman makes me more aware of the need to really work on self, to define self, and to be more aware of where do I stand and how much am I needed? Is the help really needed? Okay, I'll skip this part. Maybe I'll go to the emotional process. Um, I think we cannot avoid having unfairness or unjust situation in society and family. But I think there are two main variables, as stipulated by Dr. Bowen, about how the treatment can be mediated. So chronic anxiety and differentiation of self are two main variables that may affect how we abide or treat the rules. I think if chronic anxiety is high and differentiation of self or the family or individual is low, there will be less thoughtfulness and rationality. There will be a rigid and inflexible adherence of rules. Oppression, gender bias against women will be more severe, and more domineering and abusive behaviors of the males. The males may tend to be autocratic, dogmatic, reactive dissent and confrontation. So that happens if chronic anxiety is higher. Emotional patterns, besides marital conflicts, reactive distance, I think one very prominent reactive pattern is reciprocal function. Husband being domineering, wife giving in, being the adaptive self, under-functioning, physical symptoms, sickness, depressive symptoms, submission to authority. The other part is wife may be over-functioning, caregiving, sacrificing for family members, and heavily involved. This is a very common pattern I see, that the wife or the sisters often sacrifice a lot for siblings, for brothers. Like there will be a sister paying for the mortgage of the brothers' families, paying debts for brothers, and families are expecting her to do that. And through being helpful, useful, the woman attain much togetherness and much validation from some of family members. So frequent outcomes for these over-functioning daughters, they earn the respect and affection of siblings and parents. Some of these acts may take on an altruistic element. Affection and good connection may be maintained between the siblings and parents. However, in some other situation, their sacrifice was deemed as an obligation, not really appreciated. Rather, if they do not sacrifice, they will be shamed, ridiculed, or ill-treated. And there will be a vicious cycle. Some women will sacrifice more with the hope to earn the favor and recognition of parents especially. However, frequently, the more attempts to please the parents and siblings, the more denigration is due to the women, and the more they feel worthy and encouraged. The harder the women try to get the women's approval, the more sacrifice expected of them. On the other hand, the parents will also engage in another approval-seeking pattern with the sons. The parents will also seek the approval of the son by being very nice to the sons. And a common phenomenon is that it is the daughter who have toiled for the parents, did dirty and mundane jobs for them, serving them in detailed ways, going out of the way to help them, while the sons are much freer, enjoy much more privilege and rights, and not expected to show the caring of the parents. And the parents are often untouched by the good deeds and good efforts of the daughters, but will be appreciative and touched by the little deeds that the son would do for them. So that's the reciprocity of the process. As I said, the parents will be engaging their own cycle with the sons, trying to please the sons. Well, I think it's hard to get away with all the unjust situation on society level, but I think as individuals, lowering our anxiety is important. Seeing reality more clearly and arrive at more thoughtful choices and discern whether such discrimination is good for all parties in the long run. And I think working on self is also extremely important. And from my contact with my clients and friends and relatives, actually discovering the sense of self is very important for many of us. As we see that in many of our early teaching, the sense of self for women is not really endorsed. So for many, they may not know that there's a sense of self. So I found that discovering the sense of self for women in our culture is a very important job. many are not aware of its existence. And so work on self also requires us to not see ourselves as victim, but take a broad view and to see how these kind of rules get developed and be self-developed and also be self-focused, developing a clear and solid sense of self, knowing what one wants, our limit, and what one is willing to do or not do. And the other point is being productive. I think financial independence is a very important factor in developing our differentiating of self. So I will hope that we can also work on financial independence. Okay, I'm very sorry for the time factor.
I'm sorry to interrupt.